Hello, listeners. I hope everyone is having a good week. This episode, I'm going to be addressing the issue of older trainees and the idea that as we age, we should be doing less, or perhaps doing things with less intensity and less loading. Is there any truth to this? Should I now be looking forward to a future where I wear Velcro tennis shoes and use that hand bike thing at the gym? Now, the first thing to note here is that as we get older, we do suffer from age-related loss of muscle mass. I've spoken about this before. It's called sarcopenia, which my biggest detractors will call a gratuitous use of Latin because I love making out I'm real smart. Well, fooled you, because it's actually Greek, and it means death of the flesh. Same prefix as in sarcophagus. As we age, we become anabolically resistant, anabolic being muscle building, catabolic being the opposite. And anabolic resistance comes about due to a decreased response to stimuli like exercise and protein consumption. This decreased response leads to sarcopenia, which displays itself in ways such as decreased strength, balance problems, decreased mobility, and increase in risk of having a fall. So why does this happen? Why do older people become metabolically resistant or resistant to muscle building? Well, first of all, there's an event that occurs when we ingest protein. It's called myofibrillar protein synthesis. This is way too complex for me to get into in a 10-minute podcast and don't think it's really particularly interesting anyway. So in the interests of keeping it light, we'll say that some types of amino acids, when consumed, trigger a metabolic process that builds muscle mass. This is important because it repairs muscle damage from exercise. I say some types of amino acids because when we consume protein from different sources, whether they're plant or animal-based, they contain different amino acids in varying amounts. The amino acid that we're looking for muscle protein synthesis is called leucine. High leucine content is good. Anyway, as usual, I am digressing from the original question I posed. Why does anabolic resistance happen? Basically, as we age, we become less responsive to nutrient intake, including amino acids. So when we continue ingesting the same levels of nutrition, we respond in a lower manner than we did when we were younger. This is more complicated because due to a range of factors like diminishing sense of smell and taste, older people tend to eat less food anyway. And the next reason is a decreased response to resistance training. Again, this is too complex to get into in 10 minutes, but there are lots of reasons such as decreasing levels of testosterone and growth hormones as we age, changes to sleep patterns, changes in heart function, vascular function, and as already mentioned, decreased response to amino acid intake, and therefore lower levels of muscle protein synthesis. So, what can we do about this? Well, when cultural stereotypes, television shows, and even our loved ones tell us we need to slow down, eat less food, eat less meat, please don't email me about the ethics of veganism, or just to even act our age. It's a little surprising that, it's not hard to push back. I saw this in my own family. So my father was actually a powerlifting champion. He had a 310 kilo deadlift, a 285 kilo squat, and a 210 kilo bench press with a personal best total of 800 kilo or 1,760 pounds. Now he's 78 this year, and about a decade ago, his wife put him on ready meals from some company called Slimmer's World. Apparently, she'd watched a documentary, and now fat and protein are terribly bad for you. Now, I get that she had good intentions, but there's no way that I would take an aging person, put them on a diet of frozen ready meals with low fat and low protein. First of all, frozen ready meals are terrible for you. The next thing is that fat's required to make hormones, and protein is required to make muscle, and calories are required to maintain body weight and to help us build muscle as well. It was just insane to me And whilst I can't draw anything more than an inductive inference from it, I have to say that in the last 10 years, his health has also nosedived. Everything from absence of memory to confusion and, having several falls. Age aside, how on earth does a man that could squat over 600 pounds manage to fall up a set of steps, not be able to stop himself, and end up in hospital? Not once, but 3 times. The same man told me a couple of years ago that I had to stop training before I hurt myself. This is a problem because it's culturally ingrained that as we get older, we hit our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, we need to slow down. But it's not like that in all cultures. As you probably know, if you've been listening for a while, I used to live in Hong Kong. And every morning when I got up, maybe 5:15, 5:30 to head to the gym to coach at 6 a.m., I would pass some neighborhood parks. And they were full at 5:30 a.m. of local people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s doing exercise. Mainly Tai Chi, but also things like hanging on pull-up bars, doing abdominal work, and jogging around. I'll say that again. Every morning, there were people in their 90s at 5:30 out doing Tai Chi in a group and pull-ups in the park. Now, a quick Google search of life expectancy by country tells me that Hong Kong has the longest life expectancy in the world. The top 3 is rounded out with Japan and South Korea, all places I've lived. And the theme is the same. You would see elderly people out as a group in the morning doing Tai Chi, karate, some kind of basic gymnastics, all just types of physical training. The average life expectancy in Hong Kong is 85.7, and in the United States it's 79.6. So again, it would be inductive inference for me to make any claims about the relationship between these things, but I'll let you make your own inferences there. So, anabolic resistance is a real thing. It's also a bad thing. Once we get over this cultural mentality that might be limiting our beliefs about training and aging, what can we do to attack this? First of all, it's like anything else. You train for it. Let's say I had auditory resistance, and therefore my ability to hear some music or hear the television was diminished. What would you say to me if I said I can't hear the TV? Well, the chances are high that you would say, okay, turn the volume up. In other words, I would increase the dose of sound waves that I was receiving. So what should I do, therefore, if I am resistant to amino acids and showing a blunted response to them? Well, turn them up. I need to increase my protein intake, not decrease it because I'm getting older. I might have to eat more often to get the same number in during the day or an increased number because I might not be able to eat a large meal anymore, but I need to intake more amino acids to create the same dose response I had when I was younger. Specifically, we need to focus on protein intake, which is rich in leucine, since that has the biggest impact on muscle protein synthesis. And if we're not feeling as hungry, it follows logically that I would therefore want to consume the sources that were richest in leucine so I could have the highest leucine dose for the smallest amount of food. Therefore, you have to focus on things like beef and chicken. The reason being that per 100 grams, beef has around about 2,900 milligrams of leucine. Chicken has around about 2,000 milligrams per 100 grams. Eggs have half of that at only 1,000 milligrams. And things like beans only come in at about 600 milligrams. So yes, you can have leucine on a plant-based diet. But since older people do struggle with portion sizes, it perhaps is better to stick to something like beef, which has almost 5 times as much leucine for the same amount of weight. The same thing goes for training. Again, if we view training like we would any medical intervention, which is the case in sarcopenia because it's agreed universally that resistance training is the best intervention for age-related muscle wastage, then we need to think about it in terms of dose response. If you go to the doctor and you put on some medication, and over time that medication stops working, the first thing the doctor does is increase the dose. They don't change the medication. They already know the medication's working. The first line response is a dose increase. You might get a great dose response from squatting sets of 3 once a week when you're 21. But when you're 61, that might need to look at like sets of 10, 3 times a week to get the same dose response. Which should be easy to do because, it's my understanding that older people perhaps might have retired. So therefore, time constraints may be less of an issue than someone younger who has a full-time job and a young family. So that's it this week. Anabolic resistance will come to us all. But the data tells us that older trainees can overcome this and still maintain and even build muscle mass, which is critical to longevity. The key to doing this is looking at your dose response from the amino acids you're taking in and upping the training dose so that you can have the best dose response on both. I hope everyone has a good week. If you want to send me an email, you know what to do. getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Get Fit Guy is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Thanks to the team, Morgan Christensen, Holly Hutchins, Brannon, Davina Tomlin, and, me. If you have a question, voicemail 510-353-3104. Again, email getfitguy@quickanddirtytips.com. Visit quickanddirtytips.com or check out the show notes in the podcast app.